Hello and welcome again to the channel. For this video again, we're going to have a certain old archetype in standard, but with the Dominaria United update and the rotation that happened, we take a look as to how this archetype was adapted in terms of their deck build and what other new cards they've added from the new set. So the deck is called as Green-White Enchantments or Selesnya Enchantments, and this was submitted in the Goldfish website. So we take a look at a quick card type list down. We have 16 creatures, 20 enchantments, and 24 lands. That's pretty basic for a typical standard deck. But the adjustments you probably notice, or unless you have been playing with the Naya enchantment, the Naya runes deck way before the standard rotation. So those runes was probably replaced by these new cards, and in a way has adapted to lean more for enchantments but also enchantment creatures. So we look again at the lineup. This is probably the core creature for this deck. It's a 2/2 lifelink the sky naturalist. It makes your enchantment spells cost 1 less to cast, making sure that you can drop more of those enchantments and at the same time make use that your other enchantment creatures are readily available and getting aggressive early on in their battlefield. So 4 copies of this along with other 4 copies of enchantment creatures. We have Spirited Companion, a cantrip 1/1 but at the same time can be buffed by those other card which we call as the Weaver of Harmony from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So other enchantment creatures control gets +1/+1. And then they have this interesting ability wherein you can copy target activated or trigger ability you control from enchantment source. So you can also get to copy, such as one good example here is the ETB effects of, let's say, Circle of Companions, ETB, the Leyline Binding enters the battlefield ability trigger, and also with winning announcements, end of turn, end step trigger for this one. So another interesting interaction wherein you can get more value of your triggered enchantment spot removals. And it is also partnered with 2 copies of Cathilda, which check on this card. It's a legendary creature, Spirit Warlock, but aside from being a flying lifelink and protection from vampires, it gets its power toughness equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. So it means that if you control both spirit and enchantment, they can count it as another way to get this buff, or you can go all the way with just your enchantment spells, such as your bindings and stuff, and get Catilda bigger in the process. So good flying, evasion, lifelink also to protect you from combat race and also protection from vampires, and wherein there are several vampires in the set that can be proved to be a good threat against your deck. So this can be a good buff to just protect it and make it unblockable and protection from any damage from those sources. So if you flip this card for this storm, it becomes Cathedral's Rising Dawn. So it becomes an aura wherein it adapts the ability of Catilda to the enchanted creature. And if it would be put into graveyard from anywhere, you will get to exile it instead. So this is just another aura effect that you get if ever you get to discard Catilda to your graveyard, or if ever you get killed, wherein you can just eke out the card advantage after you cast it for its disturb cost. So along with it, let me just scroll up again. We have another single copy of Paragon. So this this angel acts just like a utility creature, wherein you get to this trigger of your turn, you may play a land from your graveyard or cast a permanent spell with mana value 2 or less. So you get to play again your naturalist, you can get more cards with your companion and other 2 or less effects such as your circle of confinement. You can also play this again for your another value from your graveyard. So 1 copy of this to make sure that you can just have utility spells set up in your late game. Now for the enchantments, so I have mentioned again several times, this is probably a good to cast spot removal wherein you can exile a creature with mana value 3 or less. But whenever an opponent casts a vampire spell, which if ever you get to go against a vampire deck, if it has the same name as the card exiled by Circle of Confinement, you get a bonus of 2 life, gain 2 life. So basically having 2 of this is just help out the curve wherein several targets in the metagame can still have a valid target with the mana value 3 or less with this spot, sort of a spot removal and setup. So another utility card, Fight Rigging, it just makes your creatures bigger with a trigger of your combat, o adding some counters, and at the same time, the bonus of a hideaway land, or I mean a hideaway card that was exiled as this enters the battlefield. So if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may cast that card for free. So another bonus of it is that you can just get to your dudes bigger with some counters, and at the same time, later on you get the free spell of the card that was exiled with the Fight Rigging's hideaway ability. So utility again, another utility card is Glory Sunrise Enchantment. So you have several choices for this in your combat. So you get +1 trample, you can have land, produce mana, and you can draw a card if you control a creature with 3 or greater, or you can just gain 3 life. So a single copy of this to make sure that you have several ways to either tutor this or to use it for any other effects that can benefit your board. So I forgot to mention first, the last creature in this lineup is a lone copy of Shigeki, because it has its interesting way to not only ramp up your lands or do a fix on this, but also it has its channel ability wherein you can return any target, X-target of non-legendary cards from the graveyard to your hand. So those that was your killed, your creatures, or those that were destroyed enchantments, you can also return them for another added value in the late game. So this is sort of a late game scenario card, so having only one copy, it's make it reasonable that you will have this in the deck. So we go back again with the lineup of the enchantments. Haunted Howling is specifically the core enchantment of this deck, wherein as long as you control 7 more enchantments, you have your creatures flying in vigilance. But the bonus is that whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you can create a Spirit Cleric creature token with creature's power and toughness equal to the number of spirits you control. So the bonus 1/1 tokens as you go along, as you cast more and more enchantments, more spirits are produced, which probably buff each other because of the number of spirits that you control based on their power and toughness. Now for another spot removal, Leyland Binding, this is from new Dominaria United. So the bonus is that it can get flash, and it can get the domain ability, which makes it 1 less to cast with the most casting cost of 1 if you control each of the basic land types. So the same effect, you can exile target land permanent opponent controls until Leyland Binding leaves the battlefield. So 2 copies of it in the main deck. Another enchantment that we considered here was Fair Binding. I'm not sure why it's they prefer this, but I think I'll go with playset of Leyland's Binding instead. But since it has still the same ability, but it has only a fixed mana cost of 4, and a bonus of gain 2 life in the process. It can exile up to 1 target non-land permanent an opponent controls, but the bonus of gain 2 life might be relevant in some matchups wherein you can get the head of your board or make your life increased or bigger in these certain matchups. So 4 copies again. We have Kamigawa's Restoration Miganjo, a basic land search ability with Saga, but the bonus here is that there is also a way to return target permanent card and then make it into a creature attacker in the late game later on with Architect of Restoration. So with this ability, it acts like a Brimas. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you can create some colorless creature token, and at the same time benefits those of your Hallowed Hunting deck. I mean your Hallowed Hunting card, wherein as more spirit creatures are controlled, and then you get also to your buff to have more of those spirit creature power and toughness bigger, equal to those number of spirits you control. So these two cards basically coincide with each other in the late game of basically gumming up your board and creating more tokens while being aggressive in this setup with their flip card of this Architect of Restoration and Hallowed Hunting Spirit Cleric tokens. Now for the last enchantment, we have a wedding announcement. I think this is probably the staple 3-drop enchantment for this deck, and also for archetypes such as Esper Control, Black-White mid-range, or just basically go with the mono-white setup. With producing 1/1 white human tokens, or also having you to draw a card if you attack with the two or more creatures this turn. And the bonus here is that once you get to flip it, it becomes a permanent enchantment buff with creatures you control gets +1/+1. So for the last part is the land distribution. So we have this overgrown farmlands, Jetmir's Garden to add bonus for the domain effect, and some utility creatures, utility lands such as Busiju and Iganju's Seat of the Empire. So another Parasite Cutters for the mana fix, and at the same time give your bonus of domain for your leyline banding. So that's about it. I think you've already seen this in some of your matchups in MTG Online or MTG Arena. I'm pretty sure you're interested to try this on if you have already acquired several of these cards. Since if you notice, the new card only here is the Leyline Binding and probably the Empire's Binding, of course, but probably the expensive part if you go with the Mythics is the Paragon and Hallowed Hunting. But if you already acquired several of your wild cards, then Michaelito you can just test and go test this out for your convenience as to how you would go with this approach in an green-white enchantment build for standard. So that's about it. I hope you've liked this video. If you do, just go with the subscribe button on your Deathmark TV on your lower left, I mean on your lower right, and other interesting videos you might find it in my several playlists for Deathmark NTG lineup, and also some of my booster cracking videos in this channel. So that's about it. Thank you for checking this video. Until the next time, and enjoy your weekend.